So I'm Ryan Donohue. I'm down here at Seaview Angling to educate you on one important thing, and that's to save our wrasse. With local marine biologist Simon Thomas, and I'm going to talk about why wrasse is so important to me as an angler. For me, it was the first fish I ever caught. It's the first fish my daughters have ever caught, and it's such an amazing fish to catch because of the battles it gives up. You've also got to think about why they're so important to the local tackle shops. The local tackle shops thrive on wrasse fishing because it is such an easy fish to catch and it's such an incredible experience. But that's just an angling point of view. Why are they so important from a science point of view?
Well, Ron, the 5 species of wrasse we find mainly in this country are effectively gardeners. So in this ecosystem, they're what's called a keystone species. Right. When you take a keystone species out of the ecosystem, you have very unpredictable effects. For example, they found in southern Spain, when they removed the ballan wrasse in a small scale from an area, the kelp disappeared. And the reason for this was that the ballan wrasse were actually feeding on an urchin, which was itself eating the kelp. So as you can see, it's a very complicated relationship between removing a keystone species and the effects it will actually have on the ecosystem.
So when you're talking about gardening then, for me as an angler, I'm aware of kelp and things like that, but for the viewers back home, kelp to me is it's like a long bit of grass in the back garden basically. So basically what you're saying is if we don't trim the grass down, we can't go into our gardens, and you won't ever want to go into the back garden.
Well, kelp's incredibly important for the ecosystem because kelp acts as a nursery for very many young fish species. Even those things like pollock we found on our wrecks and reefs, a lot of the juveniles will actually hide within the kelp when they're younger to avoid predation. Kelp is an annual organism. It dies back in the winter, grows back in the summer, but it is heavily predated on by various sorts of invertebrate. Of course, the wrasse controls the invertebrate. It's a bit like taking the slugs off the plant in your garden. Right. If you don't take the slugs off, you have no plants.
So why is the government allowing people to take our wrasse at the minute?
Well, the idea is basically a good one. It's to, in the fish farms in Scotland, at the moment they use chemicals, ivermectin's one of them, to control the sea lice population, because they're growing salmon in saltwater environments, right, in very, very close conditions, and having a problem with the sea lice infecting them. So before they used a chemical to control it, a chemical was causing a lot of problems underneath the salmon cages because it was filtering down through the ecosystem. So a professor in Stirling came up with the idea of using wrasse as a cleaner fish. In theory it's great, unfortunately they're taking them from the wild.
From the wild?
Yeah, actually
right,
from the wild. So effectively we are getting fish that are used to living down here in temperatures that could be up to 16, 18 degrees, transporting them all the way up to Scotland. They're then being put in salmon cages to control the sea lice. Now the survival's not great anyway because you're taking a fish that's used to one temperature, exposing it to another. The change in temperature makes them more susceptible to diseases. It's certainly not the ideal thing to be doing.
So the survival rate's quite poor then?
Well, it's been estimated to be as low as 50% and really? Definitely 25%.
Okay. So what I don't understand is that from an angler, you know, I go out and catch fish all the time for the dinner plate, for baits and things like that. So I go out and catch maybe, you know, 30, 40 mackerels, some of them for dinner, some of them for, you know, for the bait. What's the difference between mackerel and wrasse? Why can't I just take loads of wrasse out?
That's a very good point. Things like mackerel have a spawning strategy where basically the spawn goes straight into the plankton, so it's dispersed over a massive area. Right. Wrasse have got a very complicated social structure. So for instance with the ballan wrasse, the male has a harem of females, and he has complete dominion over that little harem of females. He controls other fish coming into that group. And when they lay eggs, he clears a little patch with his teeth on the rocks, builds a little structure, and then the females lay their eggs there. When the eggs hatch, they're looked after by the male, so nothing ever leaves that area. Right. They're not dispersed in the plankton like a lot of other species. So effectively, if you remove the wrasse from one area, recruitment from surrounding areas is very low.
So the long-term residents then, they live there all the time?
Yeah, definitely. There'll be generations of wrasse inhabiting one area.
Wow.
Well, Ron, you've probably actually seen these effects as an angler because they're not just on a scale that you'd see by a commercial operation. You must see these effects when fishermen actually overfish a mark themselves. Yeah,
definitely. See, I have 12 to 15 marks and I tend to rotate them. I went to a mark recently, it's funny you should say this, Simon, I went to a mark recently where it used to be where I grew up learning fishing. My children have grown up learning fishing on this mark, and we went there recently, and it was absolutely barren. It was like a ghost town. We couldn't do anything there, and it was one of these places that actually, when you took the fish out, I could probably name you the fish. My daughters have named some of the fish because we're so used to bringing them out, putting them back nice and safely, and then rotate through the marks. And then when we do come back onto that mark, my daughter used to get massively excited about putting out, you know, what she used to call Freddy. You know, look at Freddy the fish, because it was one of her favourite fish, and it was quite a distinctive fish because it had a scar on it. And yeah, it's a right shame, and this is why, from an angler's point of view, it's so important that we rotate our fishing marks. Like I said, I've got 12, and what I would do is I'd fish one mark one week, and then by the time I'd get round to the next mark, it'd be 3 months before I come back. So I've given them that chance to settle down and relax, and it's also about handling them as well.
Yeah, very important.
You know, they are so prone to being hurt simply because the fact of where we fish for them. It's all on rocky marks and stuff like that, and slippery hands where we might drop a fish or two. They're not going down onto grass on a nice carp mat, they're going onto hard, like, scaled walls and things like that. So that's where I'd come in a bit later, and I'll educate you about how we should treat them and how we should look after them and how we should fish for them.
Well, Ryan, you think about wrasse may live for 20, 25 years. You've probably caught the same fish since you were much, much younger in this area. I mean, wrasse don't become fertile till they're 6 to 8 years old.
Right.
So your children will catch the descendants of the wrasse you're catching, and it goes on. If you take them out once, it may take a very long time for them to repopulate.
Definitely. So Simon, thanks for coming down. Funnily enough, I thought I knew it all. I didn't. You've actually educated me on quite a bit, and it was actually really interesting to hear about some of the things. So I really appreciate you coming down and, you know, explaining it to me and the viewers there. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for giving me this opportunity.
Anytime.
Take care.
So thank you for watching this video. This video is not just about education. This video is actually about doing something about it. Please help me campaign against these guys that are taking our wrasse. I want these wrasse to be around for my children, my children's children. I'm sure you feel the same way. There's so many species of animals in this world that we've destroyed as human beings and that our children will never see. Let's not let this happen to our wrasse. So with Seaview Angling and myself, help us campaign against these guys and the government to please help save our wrasse.
Very interesting facts. For me, that was much of a learning lesson, to be honest. I've not done a lot of lure fishing, and obviously we've got Ryan on board, local lure guru, been doing it for years, lots of fantastic fish to his name, and it's always nice when we're doing these type of videos to educate people properly, and that's no way my job with this game. Ray fishing and the general aspects of that sort of type of fishing is more myself, obviously, but when it comes to lure fishing, as I was seeing the other day with Ryan, we went up to his house, and just the passion for it, really, mate. The amount of rods you've got and lures, and obviously sitting and speaking to you for a little bit of time, you can see the passion you've got in this type of fishing.
Yeah, massively, but that's been rubbed off from local tackle shops as well. We're very blessed in Plymouth with local tackle shops. This one in particular, you know, you come in Seaview Angling, you can't help being a little kid. You look at some of the lures, you can see behind us some of the lures, and that's only a fraction of what we've got.
I would say one of the best stockages in the whole of the Southwest by far.
Without a doubt. And for me, it's having that option, having that choice to find, because everyone has a favourite lure, everyone has a different style of lure, and so yeah, but you know, it's going to be good. Today's going to be good. We're going to go out, catch some nice wrasse, and educate you on how to look after them.
Looking forward to it.
But you know, let's talk about our rods that we're going to use.
Yeah.
You know, I personally prefer a 5 to 20 gram sort of style rod.
Okay.
This is my rod here from brought from Seaview Angling. This is my favourite rod. He's absolutely awesome. He's got enough grunt in the tip where he's quite a stiff tip to flick those lures out.
Very light.
As well as got a great backbone, and he is very light, because you've got to remember sometimes like when you're lure fishing, you could be doing 100 casts a day, and you know, you do get fatigued. I know what some people say, that fishing's not a arduous sport, but you do get fatigued. And you know, but what I'd recommend for you today is, when we go, is have something a bit more powerful, because the softer tip, you do feel a little bit less, but you have a bit of a better reaction. So with this, like this rod here, this is the rod that I'd recommend for you. It's a Namara 12 to 36 gram rod. So this is like an all-round sort of rod. You can go bassing, wrassing, a bit of everything with this. So you've got a bigger play. So for those people that are trying to cut the cost down, you've got one rod that does a bit of everything. As opposed to a tackle tart like myself, who's got, as you see, 100 rods for one sport. One thing for different occasions, and different colours for every day, I think. Absolutely, absolutely. You've got to have matching, you know, with the tackle tart.
As you can see, but it's part of it. But one thing I noticed, it's very, very light.
In balance.
Isn't it? Yeah, that's what you need, isn't it?
Yeah.
Running around on the rocks and different things.
Yeah, go as light scale as you can. The smaller you can take, like the mark that we're going to today, we can go there with enough in your pockets and a fishing rod, and that's all you would need. Yeah,
ideal. Yeah. Very much looking forward to it. So we're going to get out now. We're going to go through a lot of the rigs and different equipment on that on the day. We're approaching high waters very soon, so we've got some nice weather. The clouds are just disappearing.
Sun's breaking through.
Let's go get them, I reckon, mate.
Yeah,
what do you reckon?
Let's do it.
Let's do. Okay then, we just got to the venue now. Never been here before. I've fished nearby many times, but this place in particular I've never been to. So looking at it off of a first time being here for someone obviously first time doing this really, what areas am I looking for?
If you're going particularly for Wrasse, you're looking for somewhere with a lot of rocky gullies. So don't just always look for that open water sort of space. Look for the rocky, look for the risky places. It tends to be a rule of thumb that if you think you can lose something there, that's more than likely where the fish are going to be. So
roughish ground.
Yeah, take that dangerous option sometimes.
Do they like the sandy patches, or they like the real rough buttons? Like if you're going for bullets, you want real rough ground. Same with conger really, but they got the mix of ground, or
Wrasse like to stick around an area where there's a lot of holes for them, a lot of like hideaway, so a lot of rocky areas. It tends to be the sort of rocky
not
area.
just they can be over clean ground as well.
They can come over clean ground, because obviously they have to come out and feed. It tends to be the dominant one comes out and feeds his eggs and looks after his eggs. Like Simon said earlier, how you know how they tend to graze the walls and look after their eggs. That one dominant one, it's a bit like a lion pride that they'll have one that goes out and fetches the food, brings it back
for the other ones. So the venue we're about to fish now, one of the areas you found yourself?
It's one that's been passed on to me. This is where, for me, it's very important in sports, especially this sport. Everyone has their personal marks. It was passed on to me from a friend that he was brought up in Plymouth. He's shown me quite a lot of the ones on the coastal path here, and as I've only been living in Plymouth for 10-12 years, it was very nice of him to show me that. And this is why, for me, when you do pass on knowledge and it's in faith, you keep it in, you keep it to
We're
good
the
terms.
same with a lot of my venues where I fish over, well, obviously bait fishing really.
So
what are we likely to catch, you reckon? We're going to have a good session?
Yeah, you're going to have a great session. I'll be disappointed if one of us doesn't catch massively. And what's nice about this like venues, that if you look after them, rotate them and stuff like that, you can always come back to them. I've got a big thing about rotation, your marks and stuff like that. I have, along this coastline, I've got 6 or 7 along this coastline, and once we fish this
once a week then, would you say, or once a fortnight on the same mark?
See, no, obviously for me personally, like I was just about to say, if you've got 6 marks, I'd fish the first one week, and then I'd move on to, by the time you come round to the next mark, it's been 6 weeks.
Not just yourself though, but other anglers are going to be fishing it in between, so it can be overfished.
And that's why it's so important that you try and communicate with each other as well. It's very hard sometimes that you can't help on the cup.
There's a lot of anglers around obviously to fish the general areas, and it's always nice to go out and find your own venues, as Ryan was talking about.
Well, this is the nice thing is, like I said, I've got 6 or 7 just on this coastline. I was shown one mark, and where I've got the tools to go and find other marks, I've just walked the coast path and I found my others now. Google
Earth is a fantastic thing to be looking on. I do it for a lot of my venues. If, like Ryan's saying, you're looking for rock outcrops and different things, then if you know an area to which they're catching wrasse, which can be found on the internet these days, it's easy with this modern day technology, then you can literally find 4 or 5 venues within minutes. Just look for outcrops and different things, and it's just a case of fishing a minute.
You've also got the other option you've got with, other than Google Earth is get yourself on local forums. You know, there is other people out there that do share knowledge, that do share, you know, tips in venues, or try this area and stuff like that. They might not give you the exact location, but it gives you the general area of where to go find them. And the lure forums I've learned loads from, you know, from just other people that are just, you know, nice people that are willing to help others.
You always get anglers. That's one good thing about the sport, I suppose, isn't it? We're quite lucky with the fact that it's there's a lot of nice guys out there willing to pass stuff down, and to be honest, before, when I was first on, that was quite hard before modern day technology with doing the bait side of fishing, because there wasn't no one around, and that's one of the reasons I do the videos and you do the videos with yours, to educate people.
Definitely, and that's what it's all about. It's all about education.
Definitely.
For me, like taking and showing you guys today,
Yeah.
I'll be quite happy if I don't catch a fish and see you two catch a fish because I've aided you. I get the same sensation, same feeling.
£4 my target is today. So
Well,
£4 on a lure I'll be very happy with, I would. But, and my old mate Roy was come down with me to join me. He's very much looking forward to this trip as well.
That'd be cool.
And hopefully we can all get fish out. But what stage of the tide? Is tide still coming in now?
It's still coming in.
We've got about an hour and a half, 2 hours to low high water?
Yeah, I tend to find for me, it's on the up tide, on the flood tides that the wrasse are the most busiest.
So always on the high tides you're going to be looking to target wrasse, would you say?
on the oncoming tide, definitely.
Springs and neaps have it?
Springs are my favourite. The deeper the water, the clearer the water. And it's a bit dismal at the minute, but hopefully the sun breaks out. The sunnier it is as well, because with lure fishing, it's tackling all those senses, and one of the main senses, especially with wrasse, because they're visual, is the clearer the water, the more they can see, the more they're going to have.
Well, I've had them on bait before, many a times, fished from, and I've had a few goes on lure, and hopefully it could be a learning curve to me today, because I've learned a lot about the species already since we've gone to the shop and listened to Simon Thomas and obviously yourself. And yeah, so Ryan's going to go through some rigs now, which he's got some bits and pieces in front of me which I've never seen before, so it's going to be very educational for myself as well. So let's go on with the rigs.
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about some of the lures that I use for wrasse fishing, and one of my main rigs that I like to use, it's called a Texas rig. So what do wrasse go for? Wrasse tend to hit things like crustacean sort of things, so sort of things like your crabs. So we've got imitation crabs here, set up on a Texas rig, your prawns, and then obviously they're also going to take things like your bait fishes and things like that, because there's always bait fish, especially when we go to the edge of the waters in a minute. You will see a lot of bait fish swimming around the top, so things like your minnows, that's a size 2 minnow, and then also your size number 3. And you may say, blimey, that's a bit big for a wrasse, but you'll be very surprised of how many wrasse actually hit the size 3. It's actually one of my favourite wrasse lures. And then you've also got things like your grass minnows. All of these live around rocky areas, sort of built up areas with seaweed and things like that. So you're trying to find out which one is going to take an effect. The Texas rig that I was going to tell you about, this is one already pre-made up. And all it allows you to do is, from this rig, is it allows your lure to be completely weedless. So when it runs through, you can run it through your hands and not get caught up on the hook. And it also allows you, when it hits into the water, so if you imagine this is inside the water, it will sit just off the deck. So it's such an effective rig, and it's a lot better than a fixed jig head. So the problem with a fixed jig head, if you imagine that's solid, the only thing that's going to give you action is the back of the tail, as opposed to the articulated head, so the whole lure becomes effective. So Texas rig, what do you need for it? You need a swivel. It's a bit small for you to see in the camera. You need 1 times swivel, 1 times bead, a Texas cone, that's these sort of things here, and inside they've got a hole through the middle so they can slide through the line. And then your hook is your preferred hook. I prefer a size 2.0 weedless hook. It's my most used hook that I actually use. And then what I tend to do is you can make them either straight onto your fishing line, so straight off your reel, or what I like to do is, because I like to change my lures around, it's like you see here, I've made little Texas rigs made up so I can clip them on and clip them off quick and easy, so I can find out what's working at a quicker speed. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start off by tying your line onto your swivel. And doing this I use a blood knot, which you can see in another video where we use something a bit bigger so you'll be able to see it. So all you do is going to wrap it round 8 times. You're going to come back through the hole, give it a lip and a pull, and we'll take all the dog ends off at the end just to save time. Then what you want to put on is your Texas cone. So put your cone on first, so the cone is facing towards the swivel. Slide that on. Then what you want to do is get yourself a bead. And all the bead is doing is, when you tie it onto the hook, is protecting that knot of the hook. So when the cone comes down, it doesn't wear away the hook, because the last thing you want to do is hit into a lovely wrasse and lose it because your hook breaks from the actual line. And then all you do is pick up your hook, same detail on the other side. I'm going to make this one quite short. same detail, wrap it round 8 times, come back through the back of the eye, give it a lip, give it a pull, snip the dog ends off, and then here is 1 times Texas rig made up, and then all you do is to put your lure on the hook. So all you're going to do is, I'm going to borrow this one for the minute, is pick a lure that you would like, and all you do is to make it weedless. What you're going to do is snip it through just the start of the hook, just so it's through the body, weed it through, find out where it's going to come through on the other side, measure it up, pull the hook through, nice and flat, and there you have 1 times Texas worm. Hope that was educational for you. We will go into more details through later videos and things like that, so stay tuned, and I hope that's benefited you. So we're down at the mark now. I'm going to show you the technique that I use and the way I work my lures in the water to try and catch my wrasse. All we're going to do is, at the minute, we're going to cast out as far as I can, and when I work the lure in, just keep an eye on how I actually work the lure, and I'll explain it as I do it as well. Okay, so let them sink to the bottom. You do lose gear with wrasse fishing because you're playing in dangerous territory and rocky territory, so there is a chance of losing it, so I would recommend using weedless, either a Texas rig or something like a weedless minnow. As you're coming in, take into the slack, but don't actually wind the fish in. All you're going to do is you're going to pump your rod twice and take in the slack. That's all I want you to do, is take in the slack. And it's on the slack point where you're sat there waiting that you'll get the bite indication. And hopefully in a minute we'll pick up a wrasse. Stay tuned.